Well, welcome to Whiteout Reports. And today is part 7 of the Lost Tomb of Alexander the Great. And our guest, as during this whole series, has been Harry Hubbard. Hopefully, in the next couple segments, we're going to have his associate with all this research and the linguistic expert, Paul. We're going to have Harry work on that. But today, we're going to cover a lot of ground, so I'm really not going to waste any time. I just want to tell you where you got to go to find out what we're talking about, and that is IllinoisCaves.com. And just start hitting every button you can find on there. There's a lot. In fact, I was just telling Harry before the show, there's so much. Every time I think that I have found everything and every link, I find a new one. But some of the newest things that Harry has on there, thanks to our producer here at Living Light Network, who is helping Harry out get his website updated. We've got a lot of the older videos that weren't up there for years, and those are the ones that Harry did back in the 90s. We also have our Whiteout Radio series on there, and you can catch every one of them. You can also catch that on livinglightnetwork.org. I just want to mention that, you know, these videos before, back when Harry and Paul were really digging into this most, that was part of the things that they were offering to people at conferences and such, and you would have to pay for those DVDs. Well, you don't have to. You can go to Harry's site and you can get it for free now. And let me tell you, if you want an education that'll just blow you away, you just got to start watching some of these videos. If the pictures don't grab you, the videos definitely will. And last thing real quick, if you're listening to us live here on Blog Talk Radio, last week we had a caller from Arizona, and we appreciate callers. Anybody has a valid question, something you want to ask Harry, call in at 424-258-9302. And, of course, while we're live, we're also on the chat on Blog Talk Radio. So we got all that out of the way. Harry, I want to pick up a little bit of where we've left off, and we keep leaving off. It's so much to cover that we need a chart. We need a chart to figure out where we're going. Well, I'm glad you do, because I just get excited at this part and that part, and I need to organize a little bit better in my mind, because I really do get excited about, I'll look at a picture and go, oh, wait a minute. So let's talk about tablets today. And real quick, Harry, before you jump into it, let me tell people how to get to what we're going to talk about. That's on your site, IllinoisCaves.com. And you'll see down there on the second line of links, it says artifacts. And when you go to artifacts, you have a whole lot of subcategories in there. Some of Virginia Horrigan's gallery exclusives that are only on Harry's site. Artifacts, tablets, gold artifacts, Egyptian glyphs, Greek tablets, things like that. And if you check in there, what we're going to talk about today is in with tablets under the second tablet section. Well, Harry, I'll just let you start with the tablets. And one thing I do want to mention before you get going, I brought it up in earlier shows that, okay, Illinois Caves is fantastic and mesmerizing when you see the photos and you look at everything. And, you know, your older videos and all that. But it's not the only place things like what you found have been found in North America. So could we start out with that? Can you give me, you know, hey, let's go for history.
Okay. I can tell you that there have been strange artifacts found all over North America. There have been fantastic artifacts found in Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida. The list goes on and on. And even in Oklahoma, I encourage anyone to check out or do some research on the Spiro mounds. That was a mound system that was looted in the 1800s early 1900s. And the artifacts were strewn about, and there were people that cared enough to somewhat put them back together again. There's Moundville in Alabama that has some artifacts from it or that were found there that are very similar to the Burroughs Cave artifacts or Lost Tomb artifacts. And we don't want to forget the statues found at the Etowah Mounds in Georgia, carved out of marble. And these statues appear to be Chinese, just fantastic artifacts found all over the Midwest, the Southeast, the Northeast. Sun discs, gold artifacts were found. And the Smithsonian Institute, of course, has a rule that we just want to suppress all that. We don't want to advertise just something misplaced.
Really?
And I want to add that I was told by an authenticator years ago that he was sent, just as a side show, sent some samples of purple jade that came from a site in South America. They were purple jade beads. They sent them in to be tested. He told them that they came from Afghanistan, a jade mine in Afghanistan.
Wow.
And they told him, well, you just keep them. They didn't want them involved with their accredited site because that would throw a loophole in there or just throw a wrench in the works. So they didn't want it there. But I was also able to see actual fired clay cobras that were found in Mexico. And they were authenticated and they were real. And there are renegade archaeologists out there that are bucking the system and saying, hey, look, you can't deny this. You can't throw this off to the side. And they're in Arizona, New Mexico, Old Mexico. They do exist, and they do come up with stuff. And these guys are the brilliant earth shakers that are pioneers in their field that are willing to step out of the box and give something a second look. And then when you get down into Central America and South America, the artifacts and the peculiarities just go on and on and on.
Oh, they sure do, even with the pyramids.
And when we talk about stashes that are found in like Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, et cetera, they're manufactured pretty much on native stone. And they do depict, many of them, extinct animals, people who are dressed funny. I remember reading in the 1800s about Cave-in Rock, which is down on the Ohio River here in southern Illinois. And all of the picture glyphs that were found in a upper alcove, a room above the actual cave itself. And the books from the early 1800s describe Roman-type people kneeling down in togas, animals. There's a picture of an elephant that has no trunk, but it's a similar type of animal. Different types of animals that we don't know really what they are. And these are quite commonplace around this country, the animals that existed evidently at one time, but we're not sure exactly what they are or the finer details of their particular anatomies. And in this particular tomb here in Illinois, the artifacts go into many, many different categories. When it comes to people, you have people doing actions, and then with the script actually describes either the person or the action that they are engaged with, which is exactly what we see in Europe and Asia, Lower Asia, Middle East. You'll have people doing something, and then the inscription describes exactly what they are doing. And when it comes to people, you would say, well, what type of people are we seeing in these artifacts for what we are claiming Alexander's tomb? And now bear in mind here, this is week number 7 that we've been engaged in this, and it's been 18 and a half years that we've been saying Alexander the Great is buried or in Marion County, Illinois, and no one the world over has proven us wrong on anything. So I have to mention that because as the word gets out more and more, people will be able to come back and refer to all this and say, okay, they were saying it then, and we're saying it now. This is what we have. But not only is this the tomb of Alexander the Great, it contains the entire Ptolemaic dynasty, including the cadaver of Queen Cleopatra. All right, so what would you think that you would possibly see on these tablets that were found in this tomb?
I would
and I'm
expect
going to run
to
down
see,
some of them for you.
I would expect to see things from Egypt if what you just said is true.
Oh, yeah, and Egypt and Rome, Greece, Lydia. The gamut runs pretty wide.
All the Mediterranean, without a doubt. So, all right, show me what you got.
And many of these I don't have pictures of, but I hope to have soon, or this year, next year, a lot more pictures than what I have. And I want to just let you know that what we have on our website, as extensive as it is probably less than a tenth of the actual artifacts known.
Wow.
So it's when we put the web page together, everybody was on dial-up. You didn't have Wi-Fi, wireless, cable connections, or satellite connections back in the late 90s. Everybody was on dial-up. And we had to make the web page where it was fast, easy to download, without a lot of cookies and garbage strewn in there that would plug people's systems up. So in the late 90s, when all that was created, it had to be quick. The pictures are not super high res so that they downloaded quicker. And there was a polished stone that I used to have a picture of it. I don't know where the picture is now. Hope to have another of Gaius Augustus. And that's
Who's
how
that?
Gaius Augustus was Octavian, basically Augustus Caesar.
Oh.
But it had his name as Gaius Augustus, which is not a typical way someone would write his name.
Family
Gaius
name.
Augustus. And it was a beautiful stone, polished black, Lavagna, Gaius Augustus. He was pictured in there. There is a stone, a nice stone, that pictures Mithridates. And it says there, Mithridates, Scourge of Rome, or Scourge of Roma, I believe is what that particular stone said. There is a real nice picture of Hannibal Barca. And I believe that Hannibal stone is pictured in Tomb Tape 4, along with Pyrrhus, Pyrrhus of Epirus. And it says, Pyrrhus, king of the Molossians, or Molossi Rex, is I believe how it says that. So a lot of the modern-day forgers, they don't know enough about the ancient languages to correctly fake a stone, and they always fake the stones with an English syntax. Well, when you have stones that are clearly in a Latin syntax, you say, oh, okay, well, it's obvious that stone is pretty much dead on. You know, that it's not a question. But when you have, I think we discussed that a couple of shows back, that people that don't know or don't study these ancient languages, it always seems to have an English syntax.
Yeah, Englishized.
Which is how we speak today, how we write today, how our sentences are composed. And back in the old days, they weren't quite like that. You had noun, verb, noun, and you had the words were quite different, put together quite different than they are now. Molossi Rex would be Molossian king, meaning king of the Molossians. And that was on Pyrrhus. There's another black stone that says Croesus, king of Lydia. And it's a great carving of King Croesus. Now, we don't know if that is a contemporary depiction of Croesus. We don't know, because he lived a long time ago. He lived, in the 4th century B.C., and the stone is not dated. So maybe somebody carved it from a bust. We don't know. We don't know. But it says Croesus, king of Lydia.
Now you're talking about what came out of, Harry, this is out of your, not your cave, but the cave that you have spent so much time researching.
Sure.
You're talking about artifacts that came from the Illinois caves.
Yes.
Wow.
And there it is. I mean, it's Croesus written in the old way you would have written his name, and he's there, right there in a Persian-type hat, a cap. It's just amazing. And
so
there is one stone
like
that
you hit a
says...
library. You hit a library of history more than 2,000 years ago. You actually... Right. This kind of backs up your claim that this is not just the lost tomb of Alexander the Great, but you might have, and probably do, have artifacts and tablets and cartouches and everything that come from before the great library of Alexander in Egypt.
Correct. It is our opinion that many of these ancient artifacts were ancient 2,000 years ago. How ancient, we don't know, but some of them look really old and have massive patina on them. I've got some pictures of some of the stones that have crystalline over the carvings, have lime conglomerations over the carving itself, and some of them have a patina that's just so thick you can't bleach it off, much less scrape it off or anything else. They're just there. And then there's the stone that says Aletes Tiba. I think this one is on. I think it's on the final version of Tomb Tape 3, which I just found a copy of, and I believe it's also on Tomb Tape 4, Aletes Tiba, who is Ptolemy the 10th or 11th, Cleopatra's father. And then there's the stone that says, Beloved of the gods, loving her father, Queen Cleopatra, mother of Helios the king. And it's got the carving of a woman facing right in an Egyptian-type crown, ancient Egyptian-type crown, not the king like we would have Burger King crown. It's quite different than what we would think of today. And these are the people. There's Julius Caesar, who's going, but it uses his North Libyan name, Yola Caesar. There's several of those. There's several of Alexander Helios. Probably the most of anyone else would be Alexander Helios, portraits of him. But we also have portraits of King Yuba, portraits of Ptolemy Soter I. And remember, we haven't seen all of the portraits. This is just what we've seen and what Paul's been able to decipher so far. So it is exactly the type of plethora of ancient characters and names that you would expect to see. There is a gold coin that says Marcus Antonius with 3, or Marcus Antonius Triumvir on it. And it's a big gold replica coin that's quite large, and that would be something that you might expect to see. There are animals.
Said gold, Harry, back up. You said gold replica coin. Explain that. Replica how?
Well, evidently Burroughs had replicas made from some company somewhere before he actually melted down the gold or had the gold melted down. I don't think he would have done it himself because you have to know your stuff to be able to melt down gold. And I'm sure that he would have had somebody do it for him.
Of
course. There are over 500 gold replicas, and you can see them, many of them, on our website. And I think that our producer, Lynn, when she puts this video together, is just going to show maybe 200 or 300 of them. And the only actual coin that I had that was a truly actual coin itself was a silver coin, and come to find out there was another one that existed also. And they tested out, mine tested out forensically as being silver with a little bit of tin in it or something, just a couple of weird impurities, but it was real.
Well, you did get some pictures from, and forgive me for not remembering all these names, the owner of the museum who Burroughs was working with. You do have some pictures that after that owner died, his family gave you showing hundreds and hundreds of these coins, the original ones that were piled up on tables, even though you don't have the details of them. So what you're saying is you have the replica pictures of what was in the authentic pictures of the actual coins. Okay.
Correct. Very good.
I don't want anybody. Well, I don't want anybody coming back and saying, you're saying a replica is. I wanted you to explain that because you do have pictures from the family that they gave you showing all these piled up on tables and on the floor, and a couple of those are on your site, IllinoisCaves.com. So
yeah, there's about a dozen, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. People take a look at those, and those are the real things that were melted down by Russell Burroughs, who isn't the original discoverer of the caves, and I'll keep bringing that up, but he was the exploiter.
Looter.
Anyway, Harry, go on. I don't want to dwell too much on him.
One thing that, let's see, do you have any questions about people or portraits?
Well, okay, I've been going through, like I said right in the beginning here, every time I look in a section that's on your site, I go to links, and then links go to more links, and even though that's getting organized even better than it was before, there's still a lot of stuff in there that unless you're almost looking for it, you don't see it. I'm a biblical scholar, Harry, and I've studied a lot of Gnostic and seen ancient texts, and I've been there in Somalia and Ethiopia. So something that grabbed me was the history that you hear about Egypt as connected with the Hebrews is a whole lot different when you hear it in Ethiopia and when you read some of the ancient writings, especially the Gnostic writings and the Coptics.
Right.
Now, something that grabbed me was something that I couldn't translate that was on your site. And you say on there it's Moses, and it was on a tablet. Explain that, and I'll tell people real quick how to get there. IllinoisCaves.com/Moses.htm, and that's in that tablet section. So explain that. How did you guys figure that one out?
Okay. Well, first of all, somewhere on our site, I think, is the front of that tablet. I've got pictures of it. I think Lynn may have it on a thumb drive, too, somewhere. The obverse of that tablet has a man with longer hair engaged in an action, throwing down a staff, and there's a snake at his feet. And Paul was looking for the action on the back of the tablet, because usually you have the picture and the action on the front, and then on the back will be the script describing that action. And Paul deciphers it. You can look at that text, and you can see that it's, golly, the script is all over the place. It's a couple of Punic characters, some Egyptian hieratic, and a couple of Latin deals and characters. And Paul deciphers it, and it goes, Osarsif. Osarsif. His name is Osarsif. And then Paul's thinking hey, he says, Harry, where's that Manetho? Where's your Manetho book at? So I grab out the Manetho book. Now, Manetho was a Greek writer from the early 4th century B.C., lived in Alexandria. At the time, he was writing in Egypt. It wasn't called Alexandria at the time, but in that area. He was writing, I think it was around 300 B.C. or earlier than that. And so he was living basically the Nile Delta in the town, whatever it was called before then. And he writes about a leader of a band of shepherds called the Hyksos, and that they were led out by a man named Osarsif. And then there's the inscription in the footnotes that all Egyptologists agree that Osarsif is what we call today Moses, or Mosai, or this or that. So people are looking for the guy that owned the tablet was actually looking for the word Moses, the English Moses, M-O-S-E-S, and didn't think to look for his Egyptian name of Osiris. But it clearly showed the man throwing down a staff with a snake at his feet.
Wow.
Okay. So having a little bit more knowledge of the ancient languages is very helpful. But I want to add that with the videos that are online now, anyone can start to make their own lexicon and glossary, just writing down the ancient characters and their English equivalent, just as Paul gives them letter by letter, word for word. And they can start to make many decipherments themselves on some of the easier tablets. You have something with a fish on it, look for fish. You got something with a whale on it, look for ballina. You look for the old names that these people used for these characters. So, for instance, a horse wouldn't be called a horse. It'd be called an equi or an equus or something like that. The Greeks or the Latin words or this or that. You look for the old words and slang words for these creatures. And we'll talk about the animals. There are many tablets that show horses. There are three-dimensional statues of many animals, wolverine, bears. There are, I think, a couple of inscribed turtles. There are many rattlesnakes, which is clearly North American, clearly New World. The cats that are carved on these stones go from lions to panthers. There are camels depicted. There are many, many tablets and gold coins that show elephants. But it doesn't say elephantos. They call them Luca. L-U-C-A, Luca. And you say, well, how in the world does an elephant get to be called Luca? But when we look into history, we can see that I believe it was in the early part of the 3rd century BC when Pyrrhus of Epirus, the king of the Molossians, went into Rome. He was the first to bring in elephants. Yeah, that would have had to have been before 286. So we're talking about between 286 and like 300 BC. He brought elephants into Rome, into Italy, as fighting machines, as weapons of war. And he brought them in through a port town called Lucania. So they call elephants Lucanian ox. So the slang term for that would be Luca. Are you with me?
I'm following.
Okay.
Astounded.
Right. I don't want to lose you. So that's how Paul busted elephants. Now, of all the elephants that are depicted on these tablets, one will notice that they have very small ears. And this was a much smaller elephant than your great African elephant or the Indian elephant, which has these huge ears, 3 or 4 feet long. The North African or Libyan or what they call the Punic elephant was a much smaller elephant that you could put them onto ships. They could run fast. They were quite more easy to maneuver here and there. And so that's why the elephants have these small ears. They're all pretty much your Punic elephant. What Paul calls the Punic elephant, some people are going to call it the Libyan elephant, some people the North African elephant. It doesn't matter how the grammar police want to put it. So that's pretty much across the board. Now, when we see dogs depicted, it appears that all of the dogs, which there are many dozens of dogs on these tablets, well, all of the dogs are the same type of dog. They're all Egyptian hounds. Well, doesn't that make sense? The Egyptian hound is one of the oldest breeds known on the planet. They go back, I think, like 4,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. One of the first domestic animals from the wolf, I guess, was the Egyptian hound. And the Egyptian hound is a very good animal. They were domesticated, like I said, thousands of years ago, so they're pretty doggone tame by the time they are depicted on these tablets. And we have different kinds of gazelles, different kinds of birds, all kinds of birds. And there are, from the old world and from the new world as well, there's the great horned owl. There are several owls, several hawks, eagles, falcons.
There's a lot on there, Harry, and that's, I'm going to bring that up again. I'm going to repeat myself. It's not just a library of what could have been possible 2,000 years ago that came from Egypt, the Mediterranean area. It goes beyond that. It shows even changes in animals over thousands and thousands of years, and a lot of these are sitting on your site, IllinoisCaves.com. We're talking about birds, lions. How about the ships? You got a bunch of pictures on these different ships, and there's no doubt where they came from.
And I also want to just point out also that there are just dozens of tablets that show cobras doing this, cobras doing that, cobras being used in rituals, tons and tons of cobras. And that was one of the things that was scaring off many of the scholars when Burroughs was first pulling stones out. A lot of the scholars says, well, this can't be. It's showing cobras along with rattlesnakes. Now, we don't have stones with a rattlesnake and a cobra together. Well, that wouldn't make any sense. But we do have stones, like I'm saying, from the same caches or stash of artifacts. Many of them show cobras. Many of them show rattlesnakes. And then there's other serpents that we don't know what they are. But the cobras are pretty indicative. You know, cobra stands up, it's got the design on his back, and rattlesnake, of course, has the long rattles. But there are ships. There are many ships, and also smaller river boats, just exactly like the ones that Tacitus describes. Quinqueramines, rowers, sailboats, Egyptian boats, Phoenician ships, Roman boats with the battering rams, on and on. And these ships show ports of insignias of ports of call on their sails.
Wow.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And just on and on. A lot of times you'll have like a ship, since you were asking about ship, that it will have where that ship comes from or where it's going to or who's on it, who gave the ship to the people on it.
Wow. I have a question about the birds, because I know you don't have everything up on your site, but I've got some of the pictures that are not on there, so I'm kind of privileged in my book. Some of the birds look like what we would modern day call a phoenix, and some look like falcons, and some don't look like birds that I've ever seen. Any explanation with all that? Are some of them meaningful one way or another?
There are many. There's even sea serpents, what appear to be dinosaurs or some kind of living ancestor of dinosaurs, or mesiosaurs, plesiosaurs, whales. I haven't seen any octopi, but many of the animals that are depicted are actually extinct, and there are extinct animals from the Old World and New World. Now, we don't know exactly what year or when a lot of these animals went extinct, but we can sure say that they aren't here today. I would imagine that 2,000 years ago, the worst thing that could happen is an animal tastes good. It tastes good. If it tasted like chicken, that's what the people went for. So be it bird or animal or whatever, if it tasted good, those people were trying to hunt it, shoot it, eat it. And which causes me more perplexion concerning certain animals that we don't see. There are a few animals, there are a few tablets that show alligators or crocodile heads. There are, like I say, hundreds of different kinds of animals. Monkey heads from the Old World.
Well, horses also.
But we don't have certain animals, like I have not seen a beaver. I have not seen any type of bison, New World bison. Very few deer, which we would say say, but there are some bears and some several different animals looking like a wolverine. I haven't seen a tablet that clearly depicted a skunk. But like I say, we don't know what animals were here and what animals were not here at the time. There are several types of lizards, several types of decorative dragon-type animals, and also mythical or not, I don't know, like a man with a cat's head or people with tails. There's one with a man with a beard with cloven hooves and 2 feet, minotaurs, stuff like that, which we can't explain. We don't know where these people got their visions from.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but
I've noticed a lot
they exist there.
I've noticed a lot of horses on these tablets that there is no doubt. Of course, I'm a horse person and have for almost 4 decades here been involved with Arabian horses, everything knowing from the Egyptian to the Polish Arabian to the Spanish Arabian to the basically American Arabian mix and all that. There is no doubt with a lot of those horses, some of them are truly Roman mix, where it's a desert mix with the colder blood horses of Europe at the time during the reign of Rome. And some of them are no doubt Arabian horses from the desert. So, again, that's something that covers a lot of years and a lot of history all throughout the Mediterranean. So that's what caught me is, this just isn't a library, some ruler that came from a particular area. There's a lot between the differences of the horses, like you were talking about the elephants, the birds. Everything shows that this had to be a library, and it's sitting in southern Illinois. Where did that library come from?
Well, we've always said that there are at least pieces of this repository here that came from Alexandria. We don't know how much, but it's obvious that a lot of the stuff did come from there. Now, and while we're talking about the horses, did you notice that some of them actually appear to be posing or in a show? I think some of them's got things on their back. Some of them appear to be prancing. Some of them appear. There's absolutely, some of the horses' heads carved in marble are decorated with things with ornaments on the mane,
which would follow history 2,000 years ago and more. Because
and some of the horses have their manes cut in a show dress type of manner, which I'm unfamiliar with. But you want to talk about horses? There are some beautiful tablets showing horses, many, dozens, probably over 100 that I have seen.
Right now with our modern horse exhibition called dressage, which is precise movements and such, which comes from Europe. Part of the old tradition is the way that you present the horse's mane, which is not flowing hair and such, and it looks exactly, a couple of your artifacts, those tablets with those drawings are exactly what is considered an older European, going back even as far as 2,000 years ago, or Roman, where your horses their manes were dressed and properly done for show, and that's what the dressage horse of today, you do the same thing with their manes. You want to make sure that it's not a flowing mane. It was considered very important for a military horse, especially in Rome, that his mane wouldn't be flowing, that it would be properly braided, and it would be short. And that was necessary in warfare. If you had a long mane, a ground soldier could grab the mane of the horse and knock the rider off who was attacking. So, I didn't mean to get into that too much, but
I'm glad you did.
It fascinated me. That's why I brought it up.
Because some of the horses actually appear to have plumage feathers coming out of the top of their head.
Oh, of course.
And dressed up harnesses, or what do you call them, bridles, things like that, and show dressy type saddles with a man in them, without a man in them. There's even a couple of tablets that show chariots. And the list goes on and on. The horse is, throughout man's history has been an extremely, probably one of the most important animals throughout history, and still is today.
Still is.
And so here again, we're talking about artifacts from this tomb in Marion County, and this is some of the things that you would expect to see. And while the other scholars, be them in Crete, Libya, Egypt, etc., are attempting to locate Alexander's tomb, they're on the wrong continent, but they would be happy to see all of these associations with their site if they had a site to begin with. In other words, these are things that you would consider to be typical, things that you would expect to find, no doubt. So, and going on, you have Egyptian priests, you have Egyptian gods, dozens and dozens and dozens of them. We also have Greek gods depicted. And the Egyptian gods are quite detailed. And then you have priests of these gods with script describing their ritual that they are engaged in. And this list goes on and on. The Egyptian, now the rituals go everywhere. They go from funerary to worship to purification to ceremonies of war, victory, on and on. And they are in from North Libya, Egyptian, Roman, and Greco. So the rituals come from all over the Mediterranean area. On several of the stones, it will give the cities of reference. So modern-day Tripoli, they call Terabula. Naples is not called Naples, it's called Neapolite or Neapolis. Well, of course, we know now, today, that Naples was first settled by Greeks. So a lot of the towns, cities, islands depicted are inscribed and indicated in their old, ancient nomenclature, their old data identifiers. Like the Rio Guadalquivir of today is not called Rio Guadalquivir or River of Cadiz. Cadiz River is called the Beatis River. And that's one of the very important map stones. I believe the decipherment of that is online, and it's in tape 3, 4, Isaac, I think. No,
it's in 4.
It's not in Isaac.
It's in
several
4.
of our videos. It's a very, very lengthy and fantastic decipherment by Paul. Just absolutely wonderful.
Harry, I want to emphasize again to listeners, even if this is in archive, look, people, you have to understand, he's talking about tablets and such, these amazing artifacts that came out of southern Illinois in a particular tomb that, according to the writings on what came out of it, there is no doubt it was a lost tomb of Alexander the Great, simply because that's what the tablets said. So go to Harry's site if you want to have a visual and a video education that is outside the modern textbook. Go there, IllinoisCaves.com, and you'll be able to follow what Harry's talking about, because everything he has spoken about, at least in this part of our series, Part 7, is sitting on a site with the exception of a few of the animal tablets and other things. And Harry, real quick, modern history says that until the conquistadors from Spain came to the Americas, horses weren't supposed to be here. So how is it that out of this tomb in southern Illinois, there are perfect, what I would call a desert horse, which modern day would be considered a desert Arabian horse, are on those tablets. So, I don't think modern history is very accurate.
No, and it's possible that people in time of need, famine, etc., they ate the horses. Horses are eaten today. I've never had horse meat myself, but same as with elephants. Elephant meat heard is quite good, and I think in France they still serve up horse meat.
Oh yeah,
and we know that the horse meat is still used in canned dog food, and probably in dry dog food. It is a viable meat. I'm thinking that it's one of the cleaner meats.
It is.
Maybe we'll get together and have a horse meal sometime. I don't know. I've never had horse meat, but I know for a fact.
We can't do that.
I remember reading books from the 1800s that out west, the Native Americans, they didn't want your horse; they wanted your mule. If you had any mules, the Comanche in particular would hunt you down and kill you for your mule, because mule meat is supposed to be absolutely delectable, and just lots of it with little fat or something. Just it's supposed to be really good meat. So we don't know, but now we also do know that in ancient days, here in America, North America, we had the megafauna, and we had the American imperial horse, which was the largest horse ever known to the planet. Absolutely huge, like over twice the size of a modern-day horse. They are extinct. There are other horse-type animals that were here. They have a big display of these bones at the Los Angeles Museum of Natural History. Several of them. They have the American imperial horse on down. So they did have horses here at some point. When they died off, we don't know.
They were different than the Spanish, what we really now call Mustangs, which in DNA, thanks to a friend of our producer, Lynn, who deals with the bloodlines of what we call a Mustang horse now, it goes not just from the Spanish conquistadors, it goes back into other bloodlines that are extinct and unknown. So, yeah, for modern history to turn around and say horses came to North America in particular, and Central America, and even South America to a certain extent, though there's more controversy there, but especially with North America, it was the conquistadors that brought horses to the Americas. And that is so much of BS. It's unbelievable. But I just want to go back to how it amazes me how accurate, with the artifacts coming out of the tomb of Alexander the Great, that you've been able to get these pictures and actual artifacts and see them and touch them and hold them yourself, which I'm very jealous. They depict so perfectly other artifacts and tablets and even on cave walls from around the world of places that I have personally been that show the desert horse absolutely the same way. So here we have in North America tablets showing 2,000-year-old depictions of desert horses, to be particular, that are the same as what are found all over the world. Now, how did that get in North America?
On the ships, on the same ships that we see inscribed on these stones. But, you know, it amazes me how the more information we are able to put out there, the more people we meet, such as yourself, who know about a certain animal a lot more than we do. Maybe someone else will come by and notice certain things about some other animal, or notice something else about some of the scripted lines, or this or that. There's a lot that we don't know, and there's a lot that other people who have studied certain fields much more than we have that can shed a lot of light on certain things. So it seems never ending that as much information as we're able to put out there, other people come up with more information. So just want to let everyone know that this is wide open for people to make more of their own discoveries. We don't have all of the answers. We've got more questions than we have answers. And the more we know, the more questions that we have. So it is wide open for people to make their own discoveries with the artifacts and with the information and the data that you and I are able to present to them here. So well,
Harry,
it's certainly not a locked box.
between you and Paul, and especially Paul with his, in my book, genius linguistic interpretation and abilities, not interpretation, abilities. Being able to decipher some of the things that are on these tablets, especially, of which looks way beyond Greek to me. It doesn't even look Greek. I'm not a linguistic scholar. There would be no way that I could figure it out. And yet, Paul Shafranki, who has been your partner with this since you really delved into it, he has been able to come up with what I would consider common sense linguistic, and again, interpretation isn't the right word, but linguistic. Oh, help me out here, Harry. He's used common sense.
Definitions, meanings.
He's taken common things of Latin and the older languages, be it Greek, Latin, even somewhat with symbolisms of glyphs, and just put it together. And one thing that, hey, I'm going to admit, at first I thought, oh, okay, he's just doing a stab in the dark. But then I started looking at how he translated things, especially in your Tomb Tape 4, which is free on your site, IllinoisCaves.com. Just look in the videos, they're free now, where he was explaining, I mean, right there in black and white on the video with the symbols and explaining exactly what that meant. And then now I start looking at some of these tablets that are on your site, IllinoisCaves.com, and I can recognize what he explained just in Tomb Tape 4, and I can start getting an idea of what that tablet is saying. And you know what? It's common sense based on old, archaic language. That's what blows me away. It's you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure out. You just have to know, at a minimum, to understand old Latin, and that's a good start. And then if you know a little bit of Greek and the Greek letters, that's the second place to go. It's so much common sense the way that Paul figured it out, and yet he had a fantastic background in Europe to know that and understand it.
Correct. And let's say Paul having all that background and then putting together with the actions depicted on the tablets and the pictures of animals, well, then you start to see what these letters' equivalents are. And let's say that there is a D or a backward F or something like that on the tablet. Well, that backward F is the same phonetic character everywhere you see it. It doesn't change here. It doesn't flip-flop here or flip-flop there. Like a lot of the American scholars who call themselves epigraphers, who haven't really ever deciphered anything, the backward or the F will mean something here, then over here it'll mean an L, over here it'll mean an E. They just try their best to make those characters fit whatever schema
they want it to fit.
They are trying to manipulate. So,
well,
and that's one thing that...
That's a great point. That's what I was trying to say, and thank you for saying it that way. It's the consistency. Consistency. Of everything being the same, of what Paul says, look, that symbol means this. And then you start to look through, other tablets, of which you've got hundreds of them with pictures. And I've even noticed, because I was jumping into some of the things in this past week with pyramids and such in Central America and South America, and I was pulling out some older pictures of when I visited even some of the pyramids that we have in Mexico. And I know this sounds really odd to the average listener, but I saw connections of the symbols of the pictures that you have of tablets with things that are sitting there carved into rock from the pyramids in Mexico. It's all connected. It's all connected.
Right, and they have found all kinds of stuff down in Mexico that doesn't make sense. And so that's fine with me. They try to suppress it, just probably, maybe not quite like here, but in order, I guess, for certain archaeologists to maintain their grants from their universities, they have to follow their little institutionalized curriculum.
Of course.
In other words, they can't step outside the box.
Right.
But you do have, like I was saying earlier, you do have that certain breed of archaeologist that is not afraid to step outside the box and call it what it is.
Well, Harry, what you and Paul have spent so many years of discovering. I mean, it's just a discovery enough to turn around and have these artifacts that you can hold them. You see them in pictures. Everybody can see on your site. You get into details on your videos and explain it so well, and that's what I want to encourage every listener to get into. Watch the videos and look at the pictures.
And next week we'll pick up more on. We'll pick up where we left off. We'll still continue with artifacts.
Great. I'm ready for more.
I am too.
All right, Harry. Yeah, we're about at the end here. And thanks again, Harry. I get an education every week. Okay, well, you've been listening to White Owl Reports, and I'm Michael Edward. It's always a pleasure. This was part 7 of our series with Harry Hubbard. If you want to find out what we were talking about, you didn't join in until later, go to IllinoisCaves.com. Find out what was found there. Look at the pictures. Go to the videos. You're just going to be blown away, and you're going to find out there is more history in North America, more ancient history than you could ever imagine. And it's not just with Illinois Caves. It's all throughout the Americas. All right, well, till next segment, we're going to have part 8 with Harry. I can't wait. Can't wait to find out what's really going on. Thanks for listening. Remember, be who you were created to be. Such, and you would have to pay for those DVDs. Well, you don't have to. You can go to Harry's site and you can get it for free now. And let me tell you, if you want an education that'll just blow you away, you just got to start watching some of these videos. If the pictures don't grab you, the videos definitely will. And last thing real quick, if you're listening to us live here on Blog Talk Radio, last week we had a caller from Arizona, and we appreciate callers. Anybody has a valid question, something you want to ask Harry, call in at 424-258-9302. And, of course, while we're live, we're also on the chat on Blog Talk Radio. So we got all that out of the way. Harry, I want to pick up a little bit of where we've left off, and we keep leaving off. It's so much to cover that we need a chart. We need a chart to figure out where we're going. Well, I'm glad you do, because I just get excited at this part and that part, and I need to organize a little bit better in my mind, because I really do get excited about, I'll look at a picture and go, oh, wait a minute. So let's talk about tablets today. And real quick, Harry, before you jump into it, let me tell people how to get to what we're going to talk about. That's on your site, IllinoisCaves.com. And you'll see down there on the second line of links, it says artifacts. And when you go to artifacts, you have a whole lot of subcategories in there. Some of Virginia Horrigan's gallery. Well, welcome to White Owl Reports. And today is part 7 of the Lost Tomb of Alexander the Great. And our guest, as during this whole series, has been Harry Hubbard. Hopefully in the next couple segments, we're going to have his associate with all this research and the linguistic expert, Paul. We're going to have Harry work on that. But today, we're going to cover a lot of ground, so I'm really not going to waste any time. I just want to tell you where you got to go to find out what we're talking about, and that is IllinoisCaves.com. And just start hitting every button you can find on there. There's a lot. In fact, I was just telling Harry before the show, there's so much. Every time I think that I have found everything in every link, I find a new one. But some of the newest things that Harry has on there, thanks to our producer here at Living Light Network, who is helping Harry out get his website updated. We've got a lot of the older videos that weren't up there for years. And those are the ones that Harry did back in the 90s. We also have our White Owl Radio series on there, and you can catch every one of them. You can also catch that on livinglightnetwork.org. I just want to mention that, you know, these videos before, back when Harry and Paul were really digging into this most, that was part of the things that they were offering to people at conferences and exclusives that are only on Harry's site. Artifacts, tablets, gold artifacts, Egyptian glyphs, Greek tablets, things like that. And if you check in there, what we're going to talk about today is in with tablets under the second tablet section. Well, Harry, I'll just let you start with the tablets. And one thing I do want to mention before you get going, I brought it up in earlier shows that, okay, Illinois Caves is fantastic and mesmerizing when you see the photos and you look at everything and, you know, your older videos and all that. But it's not the only place things like what you found have been found in North America. So could we start out with that? Can you give me, you know, hey, let's go for history.
Okay. I can tell you that there have been strange artifacts found all over North America. There have been fantastic artifacts found in Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Florida. The list goes on and on. And even in Oklahoma, I encourage anyone to check out or do some research on the Spiro mounds. That was a mound system that was looted in the 1800s early 1900s. And the artifacts were strewn about, and there were people that cared enough to somewhat put them back together again. They were authenticated, and they were real. And there are renegade archaeologists out there that are bucking the system and saying, hey, look, you can't deny this. You can't throw this off to the side. And they're in Arizona, New Mexico, Old Mexico. They do exist, and they do come up with stuff. And these guys are the brilliant earth shakers that are pioneers in their field that are willing to step out of the box and give something a second look. And then when you get down into Central America and South America, the artifacts and the peculiarities just go on and on and on.
Oh, they sure do. Even with the pyramids.
And when we talk about stashes that are found in like Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, et cetera, they're manufactured pretty much on native stone. And they do depict, many of them, extinct animals, people who are dressed funny. I remember reading in the 1800s about Cave-in Rock, which is down on the Ohio River here in southern Illinois. And all of the picture glyphs that were found in a upper alcove, a room above the actual cave itself. And the books from the early 1800s describe Roman-type people kneeling down in togas, animals. There's a picture of an elephant that has no trunk, but it's a similar type of Moundville in Alabama that has some artifacts from it or that were found there that are very similar to the Burroughs Cave artifacts or Lost Tomb artifacts. And we don't want to forget the statues found at the Etowah Mounds in Georgia, carved out of marble. And these statues appear to be Chinese, just fantastic artifacts found all over the Midwest, the Southeast, the Northeast. Sun discs, gold artifacts were found. And the Smithsonian Institute, of course, has a rule that we just want to suppress all that. We don't want to advertise just something misplaced.
Really?
And I want to add that I was told by an authenticator years ago that he was sent, just as a side show, sent some samples of purple jade that came from a site in South America. They were purple jade beads. They sent them in to be tested. He told them that they came from Afghanistan, a jade mine in Afghanistan.
Wow.
And they told him, well, you just keep them. They didn't want them involved with their accredited site because that would throw a loophole in there or just throw a wrench in the works. So they didn't want it there. But I was also able to see actual fired clay cobras that were found in Mexico. And